Hello, everyone. This is Daniel, and I'm going to be talking to you about the Bible. Now you're wondering, well, did Jesus really come in the Bible? Is he really true? And why is there so much art about him and so much Christianity about this Jesus that doesn't seem true? And why is there that similarity in the picture of Jesus? Also, how can people say that there are such things as miracles, and why are people always talking about Moses? And why do people keep talking about miracles, and why is there such a word as miracle in the structure of a sentence? And why are there such things as people believing in miracles? And why do people go to miracles if I haven't even have a miracle? And he keeps saying, well, miracles aren't real. They're just our figment of imaginations, like ghosts. I haven't seen a ghost, now have I? And you can say, oh, there's evil spirits and good spirits and demons and angels and devil and God, but I don't see this going anywhere. And what happens after death anyway? Guys, you're thinking it the wrong. You guys are thinking it the wrong way. The Bible is real, and I'm not real evidence, but I have had a miracle happen to me when I was a child. Basically, when I was a child, I was on my bicycle and I was alone, and basically, I don't know if this was spiritual or if any of this was for with God, and He wanted me to know that this was His own true miracle of Him being real and all that. I don't know, but obviously, I was on my bicycle and I was going on my way home, and basically, I decided I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna stop right here at this White House, and I couldn't even go any further because the wind was going against my direction, and there was like headwind on my bicycle, and I didn't even have the strength to go forward. So I just decided to stop, and then something entered my head, and something entered in my mind, and I said, "Stop!" I literally said, "Stop!" to the wind, and then the wind stopped. That was me. That was God within me saying, "Stop to the wind." Obviously, it happened in my life, and I got home safely. I don't know what was going on, but obviously there was a miracle happening. I mean, little miracles can happen, but this was one of the big miracles that happened in my life. You guys wondering, well, that never happens. Well, it did. In my life, it did. Um, you know, you know, the Bible is real. I mean, if you're wondering about Jesus in the Bible, he's also in the Quran. He's also in modern theology and also in theology after AD. And of course, there's such a thing as BC and AD. BC means before Christ, and AD means after death. So, I mean, yeah, basically, there's a huge meaning to this. And you think, well, the Roman Catholic Church is pulling strings, but really, you're just being blind. You have a hard heart, and your ears don't hear. Because obviously, there's a lot to know that obviously I was struggling with unbelief after that, but really I still believed because of that bicycle incident or whatever we can call it, and I would call that bicycle miracle. But let's not talk about the bicycle. If anyone has had miracles in their lives, talk about it. Also, I think Jesus is talked about the most in all the religions. There's Buddha, but he was not really a god. He was just a prince that just escaped his palace and started talking to all these creatures in the forest, and they came back as a huge man. I don't know, but obviously in other statues he got larger and larger and larger. But also in other statues he was just this weird statue. They all had different interpretations of him. Hindu, they all have different interpretations of their god as well. Zeus, I think they all had different interpretations until Jesus came, and until they kept talking about the Father, and they made Zeus like the Father. Um, like Nordic gods, or what do you call it? Like the gods of oh, what do you call them? The Viking gods. Basically the main god Odin. He has many different interpretations, but Jesus does not, because he came on the earth. He was the only one that came on the earth, and that everyone knew about him. And we all know about Jesus, don't we? And there's all kinds of evidence about Jesus that we just cannot even believe about either. And also, there's so much evidence about Jesus that you know, it's just so much evidence. And then the Bible also says back then they all hated Jesus for what he did, and they considered him evil, or considered him blasphemous, or considered him like the devil, or considered him like a person that would be a lawbreaker. And today there's monotheists and there's atheists that don't believe in Jesus, and then there's people that hate Jesus. Then there's people that just don't give two minds to Jesus. There are people that just don't care about Jesus and hate him. And there are people that are Muslim in certain areas of the world that persecutes Christians because they believe in Jesus. And then there's the Bible that talks about humanity in a very clear light. Proverbs is a great example of humanity. There's some that are wise, there's some that are foolish. And the foolish ones don't believe in God at all. They just talk very trashy and flattery in all kinds of ways that the atheists talk about God, and that the monotheists talk about God, and also what do you call those people? Yeah, I think it starts with a P, but agnostic. A lot of the agnostics and the atheists and the monotheists talk about God in a very bad way. So really, then there's also people that believe in other gods that say, "Oh, Jesus is not real." And they say that we hate Jesus because we don't believe in him, and that we only believe in our religion. And then there's also the Satanists. Ever wonder why people believe in Satan? And they also have stories about them having charms and all that. Ever hear about witchcraft and all that? Guys, these are all the evidence that I have for you that the Bible is obviously real, isn't it? To you, it isn't, but to me, it is very real. And the Bible did say that there are people that shut their ears and close their eyes and close their hearts and harden their hearts and stiff their neck about God. I mean, it does say that God has hardened their hearts and closed their eyes and shut their ears. People shut their own ears like this, and they close their eyes, harden their hearts, and stiff their necks. There are such people like that. And you might be one of them. Ever wonder about such a thing? If you ever feel like there's people saying, well, there's such a thing, a miracle, and they say, well, we need to pray for you, and you don't like it, or you just don't believe in it, they might be praying for you, and then someday God will reveal himself. Maybe he won't. Guys, God is real. And what about your death? Do people have nowhere to go after they die? Oh, okay, okay. So, why is there a prison system? Why is there a system of gods and all that? If you ever have a life that was the fullest, and you were evil, and you never went to prison, and you had the best of your life, and everyone hated you, just like Trump, today anyway, at least. And when you feel like you've done everything wonderful, but everyone hates you, and you don't care about that, and you're cruel, but at least you lived the fullest, would that be saying, oh, I died for a reason, and for that reason? Or how about we do this? What about this, like, low income person basically preaching to all these people about God, and there's such thing as an afterlife, and basically they do that for no reason? You think they did that in vain? Guys, I believe I don't do this in vain. I believe that I do this just to help you guys believe that there's such a thing as heaven and hell. I would say that 95% of the people believe in a heaven and a hell. And obviously, that came from somewhere. And that came from God. I mean, look out throughout this whole video. Look up almost all of the things I said. And you'll be surprised. Christianity is real. God is real. And I would say Jesus is real. So think about it. And where did we come from? Where did all these trees come from? Where did all these numbers and calculations come from? And why did we create a number system? Also, I mean, 7 is there for a good reason, 6 is there for a good reason. I mean, also look up the world's most amazing brain, and you will see that this one guy says, oh, 1 is the bright number. And that bright number is God, because he's the only one that is the light. And he's spreading it to me and to other people like me. Also, he sees 2 as going left or right. That just means 2 means division, or 2 means anything like that, because it usually goes left or right. It also means going to heaven or hell. Then there is another number you talked about, which was 6. It means a black hole, very dark and very scary. It's like 6 as a person going to hell. Or how about 9? Very big and tall, like tall as the skyscrapers, as he said. And 9 means judgment. 9 means huge judgment. It's a big day for everyone. So if you don't really believe in that, in the number system, then that's okay. But at least know that God created all these numbers just for a reason, and He hints at these things as primary and all that, as a genius and like a genius, that He did all these things. And you know how we are built like in even halves. We're like in half. So if you saw half of us, you would say, where's the other half? So basically, there's two divided in half, but we're like, hard to say, but it's like, creatures are always like they always have two parts to them. They're split in half. We obviously have two legs on this side and two legs on that side, and a head on this center right here, but it has two eyes, two nostrils, one mouth. It's all even. Obviously, God thought of this. He thought of all of these things. And now we say, okay, what about trees? Trees are not divided. Well, they're not divided, of course. But trees have their own unique personality. They only reach for the sun. Their leaves only reach for the sun. And that sun is giving them light and it's giving them life. And then you see all trees have roots. What do? They all reach for the water source next to the river underwater. Yes, trees have a way to live by food and water. Trees are living beings, and they're working harder than we are ever. Trees are working harder than we will ever possibly live. Trees work harder than we ever work, as I'm trying to say. They have harder lives than our own lives. As a tree tries to branch out really far and extremely far to reach the sun, that's a very hard-working tree, and that's a very harsh life for a tree. And there's a very determined tree that is still living that's on top of a rock. And those are mountain trees, by the way. But trees have very harsh lives. And then look at the ants. God said, "Look at the ants, you sluggards." And you would just look at these ants, you would consider yourself as a slug compared to these ants. And they always work. These ants always work so hard that you can only say, okay, how do these ants work so hard? Look at how the ants work. They always move. They always talk to each other. And that's all they do. And the other ants are builders. They build the inside of the walls, and they also eat. And then how they eat is basically by the adult ants, the older ants that are collecting, and they literally collect all the food from outside and put it inside the ant's nest, as the builders would build inside the ant's nest, and they would eat from the adult ants. These ants are amazing. They're always working. And you can see all these chambers. And the reason is why they have these chambers is because these ants are building all the time. They're building their own chambers all the time. And no matter how small the group, they still build. Because they're going to build no matter what, because of the fact that there are other ants coming in. They're queen ants. These ants are really hard workers. Harder than we can ever work in some of our cases. And the way we work, we just do it by intelligence, but really all we do is apply for a job, pay money, work on a computer, preach. We do all kinds of things, but not like an ant. Ants build, they search out for food. They're always moving, they're collecting all the food, and they're doing so much work. And we're just sitting around looking for applications and jobs. We're just sitting around waiting for a job to come. We're just sleeping in, and ants are really not sleeping at all. That's a lot of work for ants. I mean, they have a lot of work. Then there's also the fact that, as evidence, as God told them to look at the ants, you lazy sluggards. Obviously, they look disgusting, but really, these ants are hard workers. And what I mean by that is that God obviously had planned it with us, and that In the Bible, it compares people to ants and compares people to slugs. And then there's people that are all kinds of people, but really, it really talks about people in the perfect way, more than we can ever imagine. Obviously, people just don't know about these other people that really, you know, people are truly what the Bible talks about us to be like. So obviously, God created animals for us to take care of. But the funny thing is, some people don't really understand why we have animals. They're just a part of our lives, but they also are examples of our lives, like slugs, sloths, cats. They're so into knowing about us, and they know about us completely, and they are always learning from our experiences and their experiences. And cats, they know everything. Trust me. And dogs are the same way. But cats are like children. Dogs are like children, and cats are like adults. But really, cats are given examples of in our dreams as something that can be bad or not or good. Like a precious moment is like a cat laying next to you and it being feeling peaceful. But a cat can feel bad as well. Mostly bad, but depends on you. But remember, what is an example of a miracle? Because as Jesus was the one that was mentioned the most, that's a small miracle. But remember, as I went on the bicycle to literally be driving myself in the wind on the bicycle, I basically couldn't even make it with all this wind. I was gonna be too tired and too stressed out by the wind. And then I said to the wind, "Stop," and the wind stopped. It wasn't through me; it was through God, like I said. So that's just catching him up or her up, and basically, all this example is just if there's ever a miracle in your life, if trees ever clap their hands in your life, or if rocks ever talk to you, or if you hear a voice. I mean, there's schizophrenics out there. Aren't these people being possessed by demons? I mean, schizophrenia is a possession of people hearing voices. Or how about this example of a person hearing God's voice? What about people hearing voices from demons? That's schizophrenia. But also know that demons are as real as God. And that we all know that like 95% of the 95% of the people know that there's a God. And they always have their own interpretation of their God. But really, we all should know that God is real. God is the most real being that has ever been known to the man. And yes, there are spirits in the really horrible places. There's witchcraft. There's all these examples, like I said before. Just remember that if you feel that if any of this is completely real to you, all of this, all of these examples, like Egypt and their pyramids, and the Mexican borders and Mexican no, I didn't mean to say that, but Mexico or Central America in their practical pyramids or temples, as we call them, pyramids or temples that look like pyramids. They all point to something, don't they? And there's also Tower of Babel, as we can barely see it, and then there's Sodom and Gomorrah that we can see in the Dead Sea, And there's also references in the Bible where it's referenced all over Israel. Just go to Israel, you'll see it. Then there's also what else? Buddhist temples and all these temples that are talking about their own gods. Every single bit of it is real. And there's also churches all over the place. And then obviously there's also churches of Satan. There's all these miracles and all these examples of God. And some people have their hard hearts. And then, people, when they don't believe, they're just not seeing any of this. They're just not seeing any of this. And then they're just hardening their hearts to say, oh, I don't believe in this, even though they do. And then just mocking the God to say, oh, I don't believe in this. That's just them saying, I don't care if I perish. I'm going to mock God anyway. And just keep on doing it will prove that you have mocked the Holy Spirit, or also did sin against the Holy Spirit just by, sinning all the time and saying, I don't care about God all the time. This is an example of people who just don't care about God at all. Now, obviously, they're headed towards destruction. And the Bible does have examples of every single type of person. It's a people Bible. It's how people react. And it's also a spirit Bible. It's a spirit Bible and a people Bible. It's all kinds of realism in the Bible. So obviously, all of this is real. The Bible is a guide. The Bible is the only guide in the whole entire universe that is this exact on the spiritual warfare. And the reason why I say that is the other religions, their guide is to do these good acts, or also how to become good, or how to become a better body, or anything like that. How to make it to heaven. But the Bible talks about how do we build our own body up? How do we build our own, let's say, armor up to war against these spirits of warfare? The other I'm sorry if I'm itching. The other books that really talk about there's miracles. There's only a certain amount of people that can do that, and only a few people can do prophecies. But the Bible says there's only one prophet. There's only one prophet of prophets, and there's prophets that talk about God's eye. He sees. And the reason why we have prophets is not just because, they see the future. It's because they see the warfare that's going to happen ahead of time. But God tells everyone He's the only one that knows the future. We don't. The people that are prophets really are giving warnings from God, directed from God, of what's going on. So there's such things as prophets, even today, as some Muslims would not believe in. But they would just talk about how the world is falling apart and all that, as Christians say it. Muslims believe, obviously I don't know what they believe in, but there's Muslims that believe in extremism and peace. And obviously they want peace, and then the other side wants extreme problems. And then it's Africa. Look at the videos of Africa and how people are believing in witchcraft. That used to be a thing, but not anymore. I mean, that comes from a history of witchcraft in Africa. And then there's voodooism in Haiti. Look at the voodooism in Haiti. Not the whole video, but look at some of the examples of voodoo in Haiti. And how that's completely spiritual. How do these people do that? Well, it's completely spiritual. And they would show people on fire and still, doing all these amazing things. There's even a video of a man floating without anything around him. And basically, that's a spirit. All these examples point to God, even to the devil. All this is real. These are all the examples that I came up with to prove that God is real. And yes, miracles do happen. And yes, the Bible is real. All right, I'll be done now, okay? Bye. So if you want to talk, you can talk. But obviously, that was all the examples I came up with.